Howdy folks. So this is a long series of time lapses documenting our build of hoop house number 2. So as I'm narrating this, it's May 2nd. Been a couple months, but anyway, so a year ago we built our first hoop house, and that's for the tomatoes, and you can see it in this shot. It's up there, up the hill a little bit. This one's for lettuce. So this is a kit that we got from Farmer's Friend back at the end of 2021. A little bit of a tax write-off thing we were doing. This is a little more expensive. So this one was about $2,700. The tomato house it's probably about $1,000. Now, you know, that one, that was kind of a piecemeal thing, right? So we went to Home Depot and got all the chain link fence top rail pieces and bent them ourselves. And then the poly was a separate purchase, and the baseboard stuff was a separate purchase. And so we kind of did that a little bit at a time. It cost a lot less money, but it ended up taking a lot longer. It was probably 3 months to build that on the calendar. Whereas this is much quicker, but it was 3 times the price. So what we want to do next, if we ever do a third hoop house, I don't know if we're going to do a kit or do it ourselves again, or, I've been even thinking about getting like a heated greenhouse type of thing, take it up another notch. So anyway, we'll figure out some way to blow our money later. So let's see. So yeah, we're cleaning up the area. So our lettuce beds are in there, and this was we had tried to grow lettuce over the winter, and it really just didn't pan out. So whether it was I think the temperatures are actually lower this winter than in winters past. I have a wireless sensor that I keep outside, and I'm just monitoring the temperatures and recording them. And this past winter it was like in the 20s quite a bit, and a year before that it wasn't quite as bad as that. Now whether that extra 10 degrees colder actually made the difference or not, either way we didn't really get any lettuce that we could have used for the market for March. So cleaning out the beds here just to have a place to walk on and set the thing up. So here I'm pounding in the rebar. So in the tomato house we anchored the hoops to the ground just with extra length of chain link fence top rail. So there were these 4-foot sections where we put 2 feet in the ground and had 2 feet above ground, and then we could use self-tapping screws to attach the hoops to that. And this one we've got rebar, and the rebar is, I think it's maybe like 3 feet long, and we put like 2 feet in the ground and have a foot above. And I'm using a maul to pound that in there. And then it's but it's the same kind of material. It's just steel, sort of like the chain link fence top rail stuff. I think this is 14 gauge steel, so a little thicker, a little more sturdy. It's a bigger span. This one is 16 feet wide. The tomato house was 12 feet wide. And in that one we had 17 gauge, I think. So not quite as sturdy. But so we have this 14 gauge steel, goes over top of the rebar, and go from there. This kit came with a few extra bells and whistles. There was they call it a lift kit or elevation kit or something like that. It's just extra, whatever, it gives it an extra 1 or 2 feet of height. So instead of, I guess, 8 feet tall, I think it's maybe like 9 feet tall or 10 feet tall at the center of the thing. So there's a lift kit, and then there was a wind bracing kit. So if you remember in the tomato house, for all the crazy Pennington Market Farm fans out there who've been watching all our videos religiously, we had external wind bracing on the tomato house. So we had chains on either side at the ends going down about 45 degrees, and then they were anchored into the ground. And so whenever a big wind would come, the theory is that as the hoop house wants to like blow over, the chain, because it's anchored in the ground like a foot, 2 feet down in the ground, that's the thing that's going to keep it from blowing over. Well, that's external to the house, so it takes up extra footprint than the hoop house itself. This kit, it's all internal, so there's these pieces of steel, which you'll see here in however many minutes, that go down at like about 45 degrees from the end hoops to like maybe the third hoop in, and it goes down to the base of the thing, so it's not going to go anywhere. But that's nice because it keeps the overall footprint of the hoop house contained. And so if we had a whole bunch of hoop houses, well, we could lay them out on the farm. It's nicer to lay them out in the farm that way. So yeah, so now we're getting the actual hoops up. We had all the rebar laid out. I think it's 13 total hoops in this one. So the other one we had 11, and so we had 5 foot spacing there. This one I think it's like 50 inches, maybe, between hoops. And so I just spread them out of the ground there and drill them in. It's all self-tapping screws to attach each piece to the others, and they, the poles come pre-bent, so I don't have to do that whole jig thing where I was bending them on that pull tipper for the bird. Don't have to mess with that. I have the kids helping once in a while. They're probably just playing video games in the basement, so I go grab them and have them do some farm work. So one of the things, so like I said, today is May 2nd, and so we've actually had about a month or so of main season farmers market, and we've been growing lettuce, and we've started growing tomatoes. We have like transplants that we're currently underway getting planted into the hoop house, and prepping for all that. We put end walls on. Now, okay, so back in October of 2021, there's another video that I had where we put sort of a hack job end wall on the tomato house, and that helped, like that, sealing up the ends in whatever manner, helped extend the season last fall. We actually got more tomato production during the months of October and November, because we had these end walls on. But it was just sort of a poor man's thing where we just had a sheet of plastic that we cut in half and then had it kind of draped, hanging down. And as winter went on, and wind and rain, snow, whatever, all the elements, it just ripped the thing up. So by this time, February, we decided to just take all that off. So we ended up putting on actual end walls with like a baseboard and some framing and a door and poly, all attached with channel lock and wiggle wire. It's like full up end walls on both sides of the tomato house. So now it's all sealed up, and we've had it that way for maybe a week, 10 days, and we're finding that it gets really hot, right? So this maybe this you think this is common knowledge, but when sun hits a greenhouse, the greenhouse gets hot inside, and I have a thermometer in there. It measures temperature and humidity, and there's some days it gets up close to 130 degrees, and this is just in late April, early May, and of course the outside air temperature is maybe 70. I think maybe we got to like 80 one of these days, but when it's 50 extra degrees on top of that, that can be pretty toasty. So we're quickly learning that we can't just let it be sealed up all day, because we're just going to bake anything that's in there. So there's some more nuance to the greenhouse growing than maybe we took some things for granted, I guess. But we're learning, and that's part of the fun. So now we've got putting up the ridgepole. A lot of this job is, none of this stuff, none of this is, accurately measured, right? Like I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably the top of the thing. So then it's a lot of guessing. You fasten the thing up there and then go and take a look at it and kind of eyeball it. It's not like we're, planning to live in this hoop house. So it's just to protect some plants. So just checking it out and see if it's straight and whatever, good enough. So the ridge poles, maybe 6-7 foot sections, and you put a screw or a self-tapping screw at the end of each one to connect one to the other, make your way down, and there's these kind of clamp fastener things that you get onto the hoops. So I'm working see the PVC going under the ladder. That's the overhead irrigation that we're using. We weren't using it in February, but we didn't, it's there waiting to be used. But that's one of the things, so in the hoop house, it would theoretically be possible that instead of having the irrigation run along the ground, you could actually have it hang from the ceiling of the thing. So it'd be like upside down sprinklers. So I'd like to try that out sometime, probably this year. Just so you don't have to worry about, if you're going and cutting lettuce or whatever, you don't want to bump into a sprinkler and cause all kinds of craziness. I think, so you can see some plants in the beds there, but I think that's just residual leftovers from our failed attempt at growing lettuce over the winter. I think the first bed we planted is just to the left of the ladder there. That's bed 11. So that was probably a week or so after this particular clip was shot. Yeah, so I've got a bunch of different sensors around the farm. So I have, in this shot, I've got one kind of behind the hoop house there to the right over by the birds. And that's sort of my general outdoor sensor, and that does temperature and humidity. And I have another one, the exact same one, up in the tomato house doing temperature and humidity. And those are like industrial strength sensors. They could go to like minus a gajillion or whatever and throw them into the sun and they would still work. They were built by this company called Monit Sensors. So they're battery powered and they're wireless. I think they use some it's not Wi-Fi protocol. It's like Zigbee or some long distance. I'm kind of talking out of my butt, but I think it's sort of a low frequency, long distance radio thing they do. Anyway, they check in. There's this home base thing that we have inside our home here, and these sensors log every half hour. They log the temperature and humidity with home base, and I've got an app on the phone I can check, you know, what the data has been. We also have some of these sensors inside our home in our grow room. So we've got one that they both do temperature and humidity as well. One's just in the grow room, just monitoring that, and then the other one is actually monitoring the refrigerator that we have. You know, it's a freezer that turns off and on and acts like a refrigerator. I'm geeking out a bit on the sensor stuff. We have another one that we haven't even started using yet that does soil moisture and temperature. So anyway, finding ways to spend some money. So that you can see there the diagonals as we're going into nighttime. That's the wind bracing. And so now this is the next day. Graham is helping me put up the wind bracing there. A little bit of snow on the ground. Try to get the kids to do a little bit of farm work once in a while, but I don't know. I don't want to push them too hard because it might just push them away. Whatever. We'll see how that goes. Right? It would be nice to eventually get to the point where we could start hiring people, and whether that's the kids or not, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Okay, so we got the wind bracing all done, and now it's channel lock. So with this hoop house, right, there's no baseboards along the long sides of the thing, right? The tomato house, we had these, I think it was like 5 1/4. You know, it's not 1 inch wide or 2 inches wide. It's 5 1/4 by 6 inch lumber, and bolted into each hoop. And that was running along the full base of the thing, and then we could put channel lock on that. And so then the poly was secured the whole length of the hoop house. That's not the case with this one. So here it's just channel lock on the end hoops, put the poly on, and then to keep the poly from just blowing all over the place, there's this rope. I think they call it anti-billowing twine or something. And you zigzag it back and forth over the hoop house, and that kind of anchors it. We'll get to that here shortly. The channel lock is, can be fairly tedious. Working by yourself on a ladder, you need like 6 pairs of hands to hold the channel lock down, and then somebody to drill the thing and whatever. So I had clamps that I was using. And it's, just a little bit at a time, moving the ladder and clamping new sections. But eventually get it done. You can see that that's the tomato house back in the background there, and you can see the dead tomato plants in there, which have since been cleared out. So, this lettuce house is going to be over, we have a bed numbering system. So, back in the beginning when we first started the company, the first little piece of garden we did was the upper section of this garden, and those beds 1 through 8. Right. So bed 1, you can see on the left in the upper there, it's got a bunch of hairy stuff. There's some berry plants up there. And bed 1 is sort of a miscellaneous bed. We don't really use it for production, farmers market stuff. It's just sort of a for fun thing. Beds 2 through 7 are tarped over. Of course, what was this? This was, I think March through like May or June of last year. I did this thing where I grew peas in that upper section in beds 2 through 7. As like a cover crop experiment. So we did that, and we grew them, and they started flowering. We mowed them all down, and then I tarped the whole thing. Well, this past about a month or so ago, did a bunch of soil samples, and we took samples from that pea area, and we took samples from the lettuce beds and the bird pens, and then just a random spot in the yard as sort of a baseline. And honestly, I'd have to go look at the numbers again to see if there was anything. I don't have a before set of numbers for the pea section. But the soil, the numbers for the peas, the after, they seemed healthy, like we could plant into that and get some good stuff. So for whatever that's worth. The bird pens was interesting. So that one, bird pens are high in like every category. So, I guess that's healthy, but at some point maybe that's too much. Maybe there's too much of a good thing, right? At some point maybe it goes from being healthy to just like ludicrous level, right? So we may need to rotate the birds onto some new section of ground, or maybe start moving their pens, like build a new pen at the end of where they currently are that's on new ground, and then remove one from the other side, and then gradually start adding pens and removing pens. Eventually you work your way to new ground. We'll figure that out. Still doing the channel lock here, so I think it took me a couple of weeks maybe to doing a little bit at a time to get this done. The goal was to try to get the poly on before we planted lettuce. We didn't quite make it, but so what? See, so here you see there's some row cover there. We had planted lettuce by February 27th. I was worried we'd be walking on the lettuce and ruining it and stuff, but we got the hoops up, at least before that, so it wasn't so bad. So we have, talking about irrigation, we have these automated timers, link tap timers that are connected to our app on the phone, and it's a Wi-Fi thing. And we have two of them. And last year we were using one for the drip irrigation in the tomato house, and one for the overhead irrigation for the lettuce. Well, currently we have one for the overhead irrigation for the lettuce, and we were trying to get the drip for the lettuce to work, but we're finding there's some leaks in the drip lines. And the problem is the drip lines are all underneath the weed blocker fabric, and we've got lettuce growing in there, and so you can't really just pull up the weed blocker and correct everything, because you've got, you're going to pull up your lettuce heads that are growing out of the holes, and so it's sort of I don't know what we're going to do. Well, we could turn off some of the lines that have leaks in them and maybe run drip that way, but we got some stuff to figure out there. But I might get a third link tap timer for the tomato house, so that we could just have more options. So I think this is putting on the last of the channel lock, and then we go to poly. So 50-foot long house, and I think the poly that we got was maybe like 80 feet long. I mean, it came with the kit. That's what they intended to give us. I think the idea is that you could, you have it 50 feet of poly, and then on either side there's an extra 15 feet that you could kind of bunch up and either make an end wall, or you can bunch it up and get like a T-post and jam it in the ground and wrap it around the T-post, and sort of a poor man's end wall thing. It at least seals it up. Anyway, we didn't bother with any of that, so we just have a clean open end, and then we cut off the extra 30 feet or whatever and we just have that. We saved it for some other time. So, and as you know, May 2nd, the ends are still open. They might be open for a while because, you know, like I said, we put end walls on the tomato house. Tomatoes can handle some heat, but lettuce, we don't want to mess with that. So we do worry a little bit about the wind. So, you know, maybe we get one end wall on, but I don't want to, I'm a little worried about sealing the whole lettuce house up and having that just bake the lettuce, because that could, I think the lettuce would be more fragile. So yeah, so we anchor. The channel lock is on, you know, the endmost loops, the full half circle there. Anchor the poly on that on both sides. But then, like I said, the rest of it, none of it's anchored down. So you use this rope, the anti-billowing twine, and zigzag it back and forth to anchor the poly down. It's a lot of just, you know, you get it up there and get the ends done, but then you got to go back and there's probably some wrinkles and readjusting and tweaking, and it takes a few different tries to get it to a nice state. So now we're throwing that rope across, and you know, it's you start at one hoop and you go down 2 hoops and anchor it there, and then go down another 2 hoops and anchor it there. Make your way all the way to the bottom, and then you work your way back the other way, and you anchor to the points where you hadn't anchored on the way down. So what you end up with is sort of this crisscross thing between every hoop, like an X pattern. And you want to make sure that each little segment is tight. So anyway, I guess so. Yeah, so that's basically how the hoop house is right now, with poly up and no end walls, and that's good. Yeah, we're happy with it. That'll about do it for this video. So if you made it through this whole half hour of me babbling, congratulations, high five. I'd be asleep by now. But yeah, I hope to see you at the market. If you're a local person, come by our stand and we'll chat and say hi. All right, well, take care. Thanks.